All right, here's my summary of my side trek up San Jacinto Peak. So we're staying on the PCT at mile marker 181.3. And so the first trail I took was Wellman's Cienega trail up to Wellman's Divide. Then I joined with the Peak Trail to go all the way to the top. There's definitely boot track from our campsite to Wellman's Divide, and it was pretty easy to follow even with a headlamp. I started at 3:15, summited at 4:49, and then came back down starting at 5:45, got to camp around 7. And so the boot track was fairly easy to follow up to Wellman's Divide. And then the boot track actually became much easier to follow. It became almost a trail or a rut of boot track, all the way up to just about Miller Peak, where the boot track did diverge from the trail and then kind of scattered for a little bit, then coalesced again to get to the peak. It took me a second to find it around that area with my headlamp, but in the light coming down is a lot easier. Trail conditions from our campsite to Wellman's Divide was about 40% trail, 40% snow, 50% snow, and about 10% stream on the trail. Quite a bit of water. And then going up from Wellman's Divide on the Peak Trail, it was probably 95% snow. And then once you hit Miller Peak, where the predominant boot track diverges from the trail, there's 100% snow to the peak. For gear, I used micro spikes on my trail runners, and I had one trekking pole and a ice axe. I would say the ice axe was probably unnecessary, but since I had it out with me. The trail there's a pretty low chance of falling off the boot track or falling off the trail, and any fall would be fairly low consequence. So I don't think an ice axe is required. And then I did take my micro spikes off for a second to see what it'd be like, and they were definitely helpful, although probably not strictly required. Although, any traction decision is a combination of the snow conditions, which for me it was quite firm and grippy this morning. Snow conditions, personal comfort and skill, risk tolerance, and then presence of boot track or not. And there was good boot track. So that's the summary. Good morning. It's around 4:30 a.m. and I've most of my way up my ascent to San Jacinto, and below in the valley you can see the lights of Palm Springs and Palm Desert and some other cities, I'm sure. And off on the horizon you can see a little bit of pre-dawn light. Alright, back to hiking. Alright, it's 4:49. Made it to the top. Around the last long switchback, the boot track kind of disappeared for a second, but then it reestablished itself, but off the trail. And now, I'm going to find a spot for my breakfast, which is blueberry Pop-Tarts and Country Time lemonade. Alright, 5:31, the sun is rising. See the clouds way over there. I'm gonna stop at Amazon Pass. came up that ridge in the dark, just following boot track, but there's a bunch of tracks going every which way. The last section, as I mentioned, the boot track just kind of diverged from the trail, but the rest of the time the boot track actually followed the trail quite well. So I'm gonna go over here. Now that I'm off the summit, you can see that the boot track is kind of coalesced into more or less one single path. And this is basically heads from San Jacinto Peak in a direct line up a ridge, or well, down a ridge to Miller Peak, where it rejoins the Peak Trail at that point. This is the area around Miller Peak, where in the dark I had a little bit of trouble following the boot track, as there are more boot prints and less one well-traveled track that almost makes a path. But at this point, going back down, the boot track will join the Peak Trail, and navigation will become very easy back to camp. Perfect. We found the trail, boot track, some cut logs, and a beautiful view. This is the Peak Trail, and we'll follow it down. So, snow is very crunchy, very, very pleasant to walk on, especially paired with a boot track. And I have a pole, an ice axe, and microspikes. And just as an experiment, took off the microspikes for a little bit, and definitely still doable, but you do, as expected, slip around a bit more, particularly because the snow is still very crunchy, and on the boot track at times icy. So I was glad to have my microspikes, but I wouldn't say they're strictly required. And always glad to have an ice axe, but there really wasn't a lot of exposure, so I wouldn't think that that would be required either. All right, I have just reached Wellman Divide, so I guess it was 2.7 up to San Jacinto, and I am going towards Wellman Cienega. Probably didn't pronounce that correctly. This is the Wellman Ciénaga. Still don't know about the pronunciation. Flowing quite well. Not even sure this is the main one. Put a bit of water on the trail. Oop. There's the other one. Good morning. How are ya?
Good. I slept wonderfully.
After I left.
It's just like anytime somebody moves on the pad, everybody wakes up. And so I was the only one moving. Slept real well.
I'm so glad.
It was delightful.
I was too cold to tell this story at the top, but I was searching for the shelter near the top because it was really cold and windy up there to eat my breakfast in, when I found someone bivvying up there in a really nice spot. Looked like he was bored by rocks and trees. He was just in a sleeping bag. Looked very comfortable, but he wasn't awake yet. So I went back to watch the sunrise. It was just cold, finding no shelter. And then he came and joined me, And it turns out he started hiking at 8 p.m. last night in Idlewild and summited around 3 or 3:30 a.m. And so I was just taking a nap there. And I asked him if it was nice, because it looked really, really nice. They said no, it was windy and cold, but he got a little nap. So that was nice, and we took each other's picture and enjoyed the sunrise together. It was wonderful. I should also clarify for any PCTers watching this that I went up and down the same trail, but many PCTers that we met chose to go up and over, so they went up Peak Trail and down Deer Springs Trail. And I did not do Deer Springs Trail myself, so I can't really comment fully on the conditions, but most people said that it was harder to follow. There was no real predominant boot track, and it was generally worse than going up, but that may also be due to the fact that they did it later after summiting, but I'm not really sure. Could be steeper, could be a very combination of factors. Oh, and my other random thought is that as we've gone SOBO, I keep meeting no-boers who are not as far into their journey on the PCT, and many are discovering that far out on the iPhone is not a reliable method of navigation, because there's a glitch in which, if you have access to spotty service, the maps that you have downloaded offline for offline use disappear, leaving you just icons, which are helpful in terms of knowing about water sources, campsites, etc., but are not helpful to navigate, because you don't have a map nor the red line of the PCT to see whether you're on it or not. So to get around that, I use Gaia and have downloaded offline maps, and then also the offline PCT track from Half Mile. And so that's what I use for navigation when there's snow, or I'm not sure about a trail crossing or turn or something. So I think it's worth getting Gaia. It's about $20 a year. And then downloading the offline maps so that you can reliably navigate if far out glitches and all the maps disappear.